Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy game day and welcome into it. This is GameQuest, the Volquest.com game day podcast. I'm Eric Cain alongside Grant Ramey, and it's the third Saturday in October. It is Tennessee at Alabama, 3:30 CBS Eastern Time kick. It's gonna be a good one, and really looking forward to seeing what happens down there in Tuscaloosa, Alabama over the next 40 or so minutes. Grant Ramey and I are going to preview this game, every single angle. Going to hear from Josh Heupel, what he has to say about some of those players, about the environment from Cooper Mays. We'll give our score predictions. We'll give some bold predictions, and we're going to have a whole lot of fun. But right off the top, Grant, I want to ask you, man, this is it's the third Saturday in October, and I think one of the beautiful things about if you're a Tennessee fan, there's a couple of games that you get up for every single year. And so for you and I know you're a couple years older than me, but for you and I, we might say Florida. But I bet our dads would say Alabama. You know, I bet our grandpas might say Vanderbilt. I mean, of course, Georgia's in there. Kentucky, you don't want to lose to. Third Saturday in October, kind of where is that on the scale for you?
For me personally,
Yeah.
I'm the same. Like you said, we're the similar age. We grew up in the 90s. I grew up in the 90s. I remember 95 and what happened in 95 and how big that was to go to Alabama and for Peyton Manning and Tennessee to beat Alabama the way they did. But from 95 to I can't even remember what year, Tennessee didn't lose to Alabama, and it just felt like a given that the Alabama game was going to be a win. So and at that same time frame, you couldn't buy a win against Florida. So our generation, we grew up looking at Florida as the rivalry, the team you had to beat in the SEC East in September. That was always the tone setter for the entire season, for that entire division. If you were going to Atlanta, it started with a win. If you're Florida over Tennessee, or if you're Tennessee, a win over Florida. So historically, obviously Alabama is Alabama. And it's the third Saturday in October, and it's Tennessee's biggest rival. And both sides smoke cigars after wins and all that stuff. For us, our age, it's probably Florida, but I understand the historical significance. I have that third Saturday in October book that breaks down every single game dating back to the start of this thing. I can't remember when it was published, but I was reading it in high school, reading about some of those historical games. So I understand the historical significance and why Alabama is Tennessee's biggest rival.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This has been a series of streaks. That's all it's been. I remember,
Right.
growing up when I was little, man, Tennessee, as you mentioned, Tennessee won 7 or 8 years in a row, and I remember being at Neyland Stadium with my dad. I don't know what year it was, but when that streak I'm referencing was snapped, and just the anarchy that was in the stadium at that point in time. And then, of course, Tennessee beats Saban his first year, and then it's 15 straight years where Alabama, takes down Tennessee until last year. It was a magical night at Neyland Stadium. The goalpost is in the Tennessee River somewhere. GoFundMe, right, to go find some more goalposts because Tennessee doesn't have that money, nor did Tennessee have another goalpost. I found that hard to believe. But it was a really great game, a great night at Neyland Stadium last year. And it's going to be completely different, though, I feel like. This is an Alabama team that is different. This is a Tennessee team that's different. Is this Alabama team as good, or is this Alabama team better than what you thought it would be, or is it about where you thought it would be at this point in the season?
It's probably better than what I thought it would be 2 weeks into the season, when everybody, it's like an annual tradition where Alabama struggles at some point early in the season. And everybody kind of writes the obituary for Alabama and wonders if Nick Saban's lost his fastball and what kind of programs he had, and are they on the decline and all this stuff. And they're not. That's a really good football team. They don't have the big name quarterback, the Heisman Trophy candidate, the guy that you've come to, kind of get used to at that position. Given Nick's recent history there. So, from Jalen Milroe losing to Texas at home by 10 or whatever it was and getting benched and struggling the way they did against South Florida a week later, for them to win whatever it's been since then, 5 in a row, something like that. I think they're a lot better than people gave them credit for the first few weeks of the season. They're not your usual Alabama, but still, that's a very high bar to cross. They're still a really good football team, even if you're not the usual Alabama that everybody's used to seeing.
It's kind of like danged if you do, danged if you don't, right? You set this precedent so high for what you've been, you've been great for a while, but especially this last decade offensively. And, you just look at the stats here and you look at what you've seen so far this year. I mean, again, it's why you go out and play the game, and Tennessee hadn't played this game yet against Alabama, but on paper and just watching them, this offense clearly, it's nowhere close to being what it was last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's not a very good offensive unit. Now, that doesn't mean you can't win games, but point blank, this is not a very good offensive unit. Defensively, it's not, number one in the SEC. It's not, I don't believe it's number 2 in the SEC, but it's about 3 across the board. This is a pretty solid, it's a pretty sound defense from, Kevin Steele and of course Nick Saban. And so all around, I would agree with you. I think this is a good football team. All around, it's got talent. It's well coached. I think this is a football team that can win double-digit games this season. But when you compare it to the likes of Alabama, last year, where it's kind of funny, with Bryce Young, he makes the world of difference. You lost two games in the last play of the game. I think without him, they could have been an 8-4 football team. He was that good. But you compare it to the likes of, a couple years ago and a couple years ago. I mean, offensively, explosion-wise, it's just not there. I mean, this game overall, you look at Tennessee, no Hendon Hooker, no Jalen Hyatt. Cedric Tillman didn't play in this game, but no Byron Young. I mean, no Darnell Wright, no Brew McCoy because he's out with injury. You look at Alabama, no Bryce Young, no Jahmyr Gibbs. There's other ones I'm missing here. I know that, but it's missing a lot of star power compared to where it was. I still think it can be a really, really good football game. I just think it's going to be a different type of football game. We're dialing it back. We're going back to those 90s we were talking about. I feel like it's going to be a lot of defense, running the football, which Alabama has not done as well as I thought it would to this point this year, but running the football, playing some defense, and it's going to be a low-scoring affair, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's hard to think about. We were talking about it Saturday during that A&M game. That was the same weekend a year ago where it was 52-49, and Jalen Hyatt was getting behind defenses, and it felt like one explosive play after the other. And here Tennessee has beaten Texas A&M 20-13, and the lowest point total Heupel's ever had as a head coach, in a game that he's won. And it does feel like it's going to be something similar. I don't know if it's 2013. I don't know if it's 6-3 like it was in whatever year that was in the 2000s, or definitely not going to be 52-49. If it's 52-49, somebody's gone off and something crazy has happened. So yeah, it does feel like it's going to be kind of dialed back and from a different era kind of than what we've gotten used to the last couple of years with this Tennessee offense. But like we saw last week, Tennessee can win those games, and Tennessee can get physical, and this defense is pretty legit, and this defense has some teeth to it. So your defense, if it shows up, if it travels, it can keep you in a game like that, because we saw last week it's pretty for real.
All right, I do want to hit on one more thing before we get into price picks. Love that price pick segments we do. We go over, under, and pick what these Tennessee players are going to do, what these Alabama players are going to do, and you can as well. PricePicks.com. We'll get more information on that here in just a moment. But I do want to point out here, like, I understand last week, and we talked about it all week. I understand the frustrations last week. I mean, Joe Milton, we talked about it tons and tons of times. 11-22, 100 yards, touchdown, interception. That's not good enough. But like, I feel like leaving that game against A&M, man, there was so much good from Tennessee, but it's just overshadowed because the most important and the most popular position in all of sports was not good. I mean, that run game, incredible against, at the time, the I haven't checked this week, honestly, but the league's best rush defense was incredible. Defense was incredible. Special teams was incredible. You just couldn't throw the football. And again, you'll have to throw the football in order to win some games like this. My point is, I feel like everybody's just like, oh, you'll get killed by Bama. Oh, you'll get killed by Bama. Tennessee 100% can win this football game. I mean, on paper, I've loved this matchup all week long. I really have, and we'll get into predictions later on. But Tennessee can absolutely win this football game. But Grant, you're going to have to get more from Joe Milton, and obviously you're going to have to handle the road environments. And those are two huge variables. One, Joe Milton's got to play better, but two, Tennessee hadn't handled the road environment well, dating back to November of last year. So, again, I love this. I love the numbers. I love this matchup. But those are two huge variables that Tennessee's going to have to bank on in order to get this win, and we'll see if it does.
Here's how good Tennessee was against the running the football against A&M. A&M's defense was first in the league last week, giving up 84 yards a game. A&M is fourth this week, giving up 105 yards a game. That's how, I mean, I couldn't be more impressed with the way Tennessee ran the football, not only because they put 232 on that defensive front, but because didn't I have 232 against South Carolina? Did they really just hit that number?
I think you did.
Removed from – oh, my goodness. That's besides the point. But for them to do that when Joe's only throwing for 100 yards, right, and you're not getting a ton out of the pass game, obviously. I mean, that's pretty one-dimensional. And for them to still be that productive on the ground. And maybe I'm crazy. I understand the frustrations with fans and Joe Milton. Joe's not their biggest problem. Like, Ramel Keaton's got to catch that ball. That's a touchdown. He's got to keep running on that other route. That could have been a touchdown. That could have taken you deep in the red zone there in the second half. It's like a kind of a corner route that he just looked like he quit running on for whatever reason. Like Chaz Nimrod, maybe that was pass interference down there near the goal line, but he looked like he got hands on the ball and maybe could have caught it. Like he needs more help from his receivers, I
I
think,
agree.
more so than his receivers need help from him. And maybe that's crazy, but and I also think you have to appreciate the fact that you got a pretty good defense and you've got an elite running game, and you can slow down on the pass production when you have those two factors at your side if those two factors continue to show up. And I agree 100% with you. This matchup is something that Tennessee can win, but what worries me is off the not on the field, but the environment and going on the road, because we saw what Tennessee looked like at Florida. We saw what they looked like at South Carolina. We saw what they looked like at Georgia. Those were really the last three true road games. They didn't play well. Hostile environment road games, I guess I should say, because Vanderbilt doesn't really count in November. So I need to see how they handle the road, the noise, a fast start, a sustained fast start, settling in, not letting it get away from them early like we saw at Florida.
Let's listen to what Josh Heupel and center Cooper Mays had to say earlier this week on that note. Crowd noise. How do you handle it? How do you deal with it? This is what they said earlier in the week, and we'll bring it right here on GameQuest.
Yeah, end of the day, we got to do a great job of communicating. You got to focus on your job and be dialed into that. It's 11 on 11 when you're inside the line. So, we've continued to work that. Believe we'll be ready for it when we hit game day.
Yeah, just doing our job at a high level. I think if you look at all those things that went wrong in that game, a lot of it was self-inflicted. So just going out there, being ready for the moment, and, just having clear communication even when it's loud out there, just doing our jobs at a really high level. It just differs kind of on the environment. Basically for, cadence, they'll do some silent count stuff if it's going to be a loud environment. And then, just different facets of snap count, and if it's going to be verbal on the hands or silent, not much, but kind of stuff like that in third down. If you went to your everyday job and somebody put a speaker right next to your head and it was about as loud as it got, you probably wouldn't be very good at your job. So that's just the challenge. It's an added level of chaos a little bit.
It's going to be a huge challenge. 100% is going to be an added level of chaos, and it's a chaos that Tennessee has not dealt with well of late. Didn't have Cooper Mays in Florida. Did have Cooper Mays in Athens last year, but still a different team. We'll see what happens. And again, and we'll continue to get into this, I can love this matchup so much for Tennessee, and I do. I really do. But how you deal with all that pre-snap nonsense, that might tell the tale of the game. More on that in a moment. But first, I want to tell you all about Prize Picks. PrizePicks.com, it's a place where you can have a whole lot of fun winning 25 times your money on any entry. First-time users that deposit and use the promo code VQ, that's promo code VQ, will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Meaning if I put in $50 Prize Picks, if you put in that promo code VQ, they're going to deposit you $50 as well. They're going to match you. If I put in $100, they're going to give you $100 up to $100. It's a whole lot of fun, and it's where you can have fun winning 25 times your money on any entry. So how does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go more or less than the Prize Pick projection, that's when you can win 25 times your money on any entry. So I'm going to show you exactly kind of how this works. All right, if you're watching on YouTube, you just go to littleprizepicks.com and you make a login and all that, and you sign up in here, and you can see kind of right here the totals. So this is just an example. Pat Mahomes, 199.5. You're going to say over, under, or more or less, and he's one of your 6. You can go 2 to 6 players. You see Pat Mahomes here, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen. That's a 4-pack. But you only need 2, but you can go up to as many as 6. So for right now, Grant Ramey and I are going to do a little Tennessee-Alabama edition. And let's start with Joe Milton, 225 passing yards. Will Joe Milton throw for more or less 225, Grant Ramey?
He's going to have to throw for more if Tennessee's going to win this football game, but I think he throws for less because we haven't seen it consistently be above that number. And obviously he's coming off a 11 for 22, 100 yards, touchdown and interception against Texas A&M. So recency bias, he wasn't great, and the wide receivers weren't great either, like we talked about against A&M. So I'm going to have to see it before I believe it. I think it'll be lower.
Yeah, same here. I think Joe Milton will pass for significantly more than his last week's total of 100, but I think it's going to be below the 225, so I'll go under as well. Jalen Wright, 114.5 rushing yards. The hook's in there. Are you going to go more or less than Jalen Wright?
It's got to be more because that's Tennessee's bread and butter. It's what they do best. They run the football. Jalen Wright's the best running back they've got. They've got 3 good ones, but Jalen's the best. If he can go for 136 against an A&M defense that hadn't given up a rusher more than 60 yards in a game, I think he could do it again. At this number, I'd go more.
I like that as well, and I like Jabari Small for at least 50, and I like Dylan Sampson to get in there and get involved. Hopefully a little bit, but throw some Utah passes to Dylan Sampson. Let him go,
Right.
I like that over as well. Let's go to Alabama's side. Let's go Jalen Milroe. And not Jalen Milroe passing the football. Jalen Milroe rushing the football. If you go look at his individual game stats, he had a really good running game early in the season. And then he's had a couple of games where he's gotten sacked a lot, so it's pushed that rushing total down significantly. He's not been a huge run threat, but he is a run threat. And Tennessee will have to watch that. Jalen Milroe, 45.5 rushing yards, more or less?
I'm going to go with more, just because I feel like I've watched enough quarterbacks run on Tennessee over the years to just assume it's going to happen. And they're going to get pressure after him. It's going to be a matter of how well do they get home and how much do they contain him when they don't get home. Can they keep him kind of in front of him and not give up huge chunk plays to keep Alabama's offense on the field? So I'm going to go higher, but Tennessee needs to be lower if they're going to win this football game.
Yeah, I would agree. I've watched enough Tennessee football to know that they're, on 3rd and 17, the quarterback's going to run and get 19. Somebody asked me on the little chat I did late Wednesday night, the worst thing possible would be to knock Milroe out and have a backup quarterback come in. I was like, man, I hear where you're coming from, but in terms of a running standpoint, Buckner nor Simpson can run, at all compared to what Milroe looks like. But anyway, I will go over the 55.5 rushing yards for Jalen Milroe. All right, Tennessee sacks as a unit. Tennessee's defense. Last week only got 2 sacks, but it hit Max Johnson all game long. The sack total here is 3.5. Alabama's offensive line has given up 30 sacks this season. 3.5 is the number, 3 in the hook. Tennessee get more or less than 3.5 sacks?
More because of that Alabama offensive line. They've already given up through 6 games more sacks than they gave up all of last season. A lot more. I think it's like 31 this year. I think they gave up 22 last year total in 13 games. So that's a huge number, obviously. Most in the SEC allowed. And Tennessee is one of the best pass rush defenses at this point in the season that we've seen. And what I liked about A&M is they only had 2 sacks, but they had 11 quarterback hurries. And I think that was a season high for that front. So it's going to be a matter of not only getting after him, Milroe, but getting him on the ground. I think it needs to be higher for Tennessee to hang around here.
It's just so surprising because they have Seth McLaughlin, who's said to be the best center in the league, right? Or that Georgia guy might be, but he's number 2. I mean, he's a really good player. You got Tyler Booker, J.C. Latham; those are all SEC players. You have Caden Proctor, 5-star left tackle. Now he is a freshman, and Tennessee will have to use that to its advantage, but there's a lot of name recognition there. But I'm with you, man. Give me the over. Over. Give me more Tennessee to get after there and have at least 4 sacks. You can play this as well. Go to PricePicks.com. Use that promo code VQ to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Again, pick 2 to 6 players. Select more or less in the Price Pick projections. You can win 25 times your money on any entry. PricePicks.com, promo code VQ. Promo code VQ. That's at PricePicks.com. Hey, welcome back into GameQuest, Volquest.com Game Day Podcast. I am Eric Cain, Grant Ramey. Big shout out to Price Picks for being a part of the show. 3rd Saturday in October. It's a big one, Grant. It's Tennessee and Alabama, and we kind of dove into it a little bit, put our toes in the water there the first half of the show. Let's really kind of dive in and find out who Alabama is. Of course, it's got 1 loss on the season. It's 6-1. It's 4-1 in SEC play, or 4-0 in SEC play. And since that loss to Texas at home in Week 2, it has reeled off 5 straight wins. Those wins have come over some notable: Ole Miss, at A&M, just beat Arkansas in kind of a gross-looking 24-21 game. It still counts as a win. But we'll start with offense. Not as explosive, missing those firepowers, as we mentioned earlier. Points per game, 30. That's 9th in the SEC. Total offense, 367 yards on average. That's 10th in the SEC. 219 passing yards on average. That's 10th in the SEC. And maybe the most surprising thing of it all, 148 rushing yards on average. That is 8th in the SEC. Jace McClellan's a guy that we know, that name. 95 attempts, 454 yards, 3 touchdowns. Roy Dale Williams has 319 yards, a touchdown. Again, overall, this offensive line is blocking at only a 3.8 yard per carry clip. I've been surprised about the lack of a run game for Alabama through 7 games for them.
It's just weird to read across stat lines like that and hear 8th and 9th and 10th in the SEC and just kind of middle of the road or worse for Alabama, which would be a huge advantage for Tennessee if this were 2022 and you're averaging 46.1 points a game and crazy explosive on offense. The problem for 2023 Tennessee is we haven't seen that yet, and I'm not sure when we're going to see it, if we're going to see it, if it ever gets to that point. You don't have to score a ton of points to beat Tennessee, as we saw last week. A&M scores that opening drive touchdown. They don't get back in the end zone the rest of the game because they're pretty bad on offense, and they're still in that football game, and Tennessee's holding on late in that game in the fourth quarter. So you don't have to do a ton to beat this Tennessee team offensively. It just depends on what kind of Tennessee defense shows up. If it's that third down stuff at Florida where you can't get off the field and it's miserable in the first half, then it's going to be a problem. You can beat this Tennessee team with a middle-of-the-road offense. It's just a matter of how Tennessee handle third down, how Tennessee handle the environment, how Tennessee handle early on and settle in and kind of feel a little bit comfortable on the road, because we haven't seen that yet.
Wide receivers, Jermaine Burton is the go-to guy. Former Georgia Bulldog. He made headlines for, after the football game last year at Neyland Stadium. If you remember, Nick Saban had a stupid remark when asked about that into the media. I'll never forget that. I mean, take some ownership, why don't you? 19 receptions, 446 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's had a really good year. 23 yards per catch. He's a good player. And I think it took him a little while to kind of get in sync with Alabama, but Jermaine Burton is playing really, really well this year. Isaiah Bond, 20 receptions, 2 touchdowns. Ja'Cory Brooks, I don't know if there's been an injury there. I don't know the situation. I don't watch every Alabama game. It looks like he's played in every game. 3 receptions, 30 yards. Ja'Cory Brooks is one of the better freshmen in America last year. Anyway, he's there, I think. We'll see, but that's kind of a head-scratcher there. I guess what I'm trying to say is, again, not the firepower at wide receiver like we're used to seeing from Alabama going back the last 6-7 years.
Yeah, it's not a Waddle, it's not a Mechie, it's not a I don't know all the list of names there, but
Devonta
yeah,
Smith.
and it's for Tennessee, Devonta Smith. For Tennessee, it's just, I think, eliminating explosive plays. If you can create turnovers the way they have kind of recently in the secondary, I don't know, just what we saw from Kamal Hadden a month ago at Florida and what he is now, and the kind of the transformation he's made. And Gabe Jeudy-Lally and the stuff you're getting from him. And, I mean, the secondary's been pretty good. They're getting to the point where they're holding their own. So if they can hold their own Saturday, if they can eliminate explosive plays and kind of keep everything in front of them, make Alabama beat you with extended drives and, not the big chunk plays, I think that's pretty much a job well done, because, like you said, you went across the numbers across the board on this offense. It's pretty middle of the road in the SEC. It's just a matter of how much can you eliminate the explosive plays and keep that place from going crazy.
Last piece of that offense we'll talk about is the most important piece, and that is the quarterback position. Jalen Milroe got the start to begin the season. They had that big matchup against Texas in week 2. Saban kind of opened it up, said, all right, if anybody's better than Milroe, let me see it. Nobody could take control of that. Milroe's the guy, and he's gotten better. He's got over nearly 1,400 yards passing on the season, completing passes at 64%, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's averaging 232 yards through the air a game. He's rushed for 325 yards. He's got 5 touchdowns. Those are yards gained, okay?
Right.
That's not his net. I'm not taking sacks in consideration. He has rushed gained for 325 yards and 5 touchdowns. Do want to pull out this stat here, Pro Football Focus, Pocket Protector. I'm a nerd. I love these stats when they break it down, deep, middle, short, all that type of stuff. We know of Joe Milton's struggles through the air. I mean, I think now it's like 8 of 35 on the year, 20 yards down the field. It's not good. Jalen Milroe the last couple of weeks has shown he can throw the deep ball, and they're throwing it at a high clip. Jalen Milroe on the season, 20 yards plus down the field, 19 of 31, 61%, 9 touchdowns, no interceptions. And that Pro Football Focus grading scale, it's at 98.9, which is very much elite in that category. So
pretty good.
Really good throwing the ball down the middle. Where he struggles, Grant, is medium, intermediate, 10 to 19 yards. 16 to 31, 51%, 307 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. So the question is, if you're Tim Banks, do you play it like Florida? Do you keep everything in front of you, try to bottle it up and make tackles and rely on that front four? Or do you put pressure on him? I think personally, the starting thing to do is what you did at Florida, but don't be so married to it. If it's not working, change things up and still take your chances and blitz and everything. But for a guy that struggles intermediate, I say bottle everything up, keep everything in front of you. At least start out that way with the way your front four is playing.
Yeah, I think it's fine to have that same mentality, mindset, game plan, whatever that you had at Florida, and trying to keep everything in front of you and trying to make the opposing quarterback beat you in the medium game, the intermediate stuff. But yes, if it's Florida repeat where you're not getting off the field on third down, then you got to make changes and you got to bring pressures and you got to figure out a way to get off the field, because that's the thing that's going to get you beat is one third down conversion after another. And almost it felt like it was automatic in Gainesville in that first half. And what Tennessee can't do is get behind, because it feels like they're just not very good at chasing points, because you're relying on a ground game that you need to run for 220, 230, whatever it is. And it's once you get in that one-dimensional mode where you have to play catch-up through the pass game, that's what we saw Tennessee struggle with. And obviously they dug a hole that was too deep at Florida. So if it's not working, sure, keep everything in front of you. But if it's not working, you better figure out a plan B pretty quick.
Josh Heupel earlier in the week on Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, he's made a bunch of plays from inside of the pocket, pushing the football down the football field. His ability, if you don't have rush integrity to get out and make plays with his feet, is something that pops out on the tape. And then he obviously, like when the ball's in his hands and he's a part of the run game, he's dynamic. So he's somebody that you got to have bottled up, every snap. He's a dynamic playmaker.
He's turned the ball over 6 times overall, 4 interceptions, 2 fumbles lost. The offense overall, again, 31 sacks. It's averaging 3.8 yards per carry on the ground. It's 44% on third downs. Red zone trips or touchdowns to trips, Red zone, 12 touchdowns on 20 trips. Let's shift gears now to defense. Now, where the offense is very underwhelming and very different, the defense is more typical Alabama. Pretty solid defense. 16 points per game. That is second in the SEC. Allowing 292 yards of total offense the other way. That is third in the Southeastern Conference. 187 yards through the air. That's third. 104 yards on the ground. That is third. It's forced 9 turnovers, 7 interceptions, recovered 2 fumbles, 26 sacks on the season, and it's got 50 TFLs. You want to talk about defense against defense? Look at how similar these lines are. I just read off Alabama's defensive categories. Tennessee allows 17 points per game. That's third in the SEC. Allows 303 yards of total offense. That's fourth in the SEC. 197 yards through the air. That's fifth. 105 yards on the ground. That's fifth. Tennessee's got 24 sacks, 52 tackles for loss, 6 interceptions, and 2 fumble recoveries. 2 defenses that are playing very, very well. But Grant, it starts up front on the edges. Maybe the best pass rusher, arguably. Tennessee's got a couple of good ones too. Don't hear me wrong here, but arguably the best pass rusher in the country in Dallas Turner, leading the SEC with 7 sacks, 9.5 TFLs, 10 quarterback hurries, and 2 forced fumbles. Tennessee will have to block him as well as Chris Braswell on the edges.
I mean, I think it comes down to what we talked about last weekend. I needed to see this run game be elite against a really good defensive front, and that's what A&M was, and that's what A&M is. I think that's what Alabama is as well. And they're going to have success in the run game to kind of slow down the pass rush and not allow A&M to pin their ears back. Bama to pin their ears back and come after Joe Milton. If I'm Alabama, I'm loading up the box, I'm stopping the run, and I'm daring you to beat me deep because we haven't seen it yet happen, very much or consistently at all at this point. So I'm going to dare you to take the top off this defense and beat them deep. So if he's going to do that, if Joe's going to do that, he didn't have a ton of time against A&M to throw it deep. He's going to have a little bit of time to allow something to get up and downfield and take advantage down the field. So we saw it last year with Will Anderson and Darnell Wright. Obviously, that's a top 10 NFL draft matchup in terms of picks. I don't know what Tennessee's offensive line. They don't have a Darnell Wright this year, but they have been decent at keeping Milton somewhat clean. So I think they're going to have to play really, really big. A, in the run game, starts there, and then B, in the pass game.
How do you slow down that Alabama pass rush? Again, I mentioned Dallas Turner leading the SEC in sacks, but Chris Braswell on the other side, 4.5 sacks, 7 TFLs, 3 quarterback hurries, has a pick six. Yeah, he's got a pick six, blocked a kick. I mean, he's a really good player. Asked Josh Heupel that earlier in the week, and this is what he had to say.
I'm going to say this, and it's kind of on repeat from last week, too. You got to have some efficiency in the run game. You get into long yardage situation, these guys are going to be able to pin their ears back and come after the quarterback. They're multiple in what they do. All 5 guys got to operate together in the run game, but you got to be in sync in your pass protections, too. And you got to get the ball out on time. There's going to be a bunch of one-on-one matchups out on the outside. You got to go win some of those matchups and be accurate with the football. So it's going to take all 11. They all play a piece in what goes on in the run game and in the pass game too.
End of the day, really sound defensive group. It starts with a pass rush. We told you all about it. 2 really sound inside linebackers. You go to that secondary, get Malachi Moore back at the star position. That's big for Alabama. Again, you got some good cornerbacks. I mean, Kool-Aid McKinstry's he's an NFL guy. All right. You got Terrion Arnold, I remember him from recruiting days. He's a really, really good player. Jalen Key, Caleb Downs at your safety spots. It is not going to be easy whatsoever. But again, I think one of these keys to the game for Tennessee as we transition there. I mean, Tennessee is you got to UBU. I mean, you got to continue UBU, Brent Hubb style. You got to run the football. You got to find some efficiency there and lean on that run game. But you still got to take your shots. And I just think one of the biggest things for success for this offense, if Tennessee is going to be successful, is going to be Jalen Wright. Tennessee loves to rush on first down to get you in second manageable, and to have a good day on the ground. I think this run game is the biggest caveat for Tennessee against the stout defense. I think Tennessee can run on Alabama, and you need to continue to take your shots off it. Again, I know the numbers are not good for Joe Milton down the field. You got to keep taking your shots. You got to keep taking your shots, because man, one of those completions can blow that game wide open. Look at Alabama and A&M a couple weeks ago. I mean, that's how it was for Milroe. So really sound defense, but Tennessee needs to just be you and run that football.
I think with Ramel Keaton, it's almost like he's got the yips at this point. Like he's thinking about it. Like it takes one drop to kind of destroy your confidence, and it could take one big play to kind of restore that confidence. And he had that was a really nice touchdown he had at Florida in the first half, that opening drive, and that's a great ball from Joe. And Joe had a great ball to Dante Thornton later in that game down the field, and that was a great catch. And he put one on Brew McCoy in the second half, in the fourth quarter, I guess, when it was Tennessee was trying to do something. So they're capable, and Squirrel White, we've seen him too make plays down the field. They're capable of doing it. They just haven't done it on a consistent basis. Now, Jalen Wright, I think, is going to get his. You're going to have to get creative with draws and screens and shovel passes or whatever to get Dylan Sampson involved. And I think Jabari Small is going to get his. So I think they'll do their thing in the run game. It's just how many explosive plays can they create in the passing game? Can they restore some confidence? Can they get more from their wide receivers than we've seen them get the last couple of weeks? Because they got to have more. It's just that simple. It's not all on Joe. Joe can be better, sure, but the wide receivers can be a lot better, and they need to start seeing that this week.
Again, I think with a good run game, with a good defense, a good special teams, and a mediocre quarterback play, you can still win a lot of games in Southeastern Conference play. But to win the big ones, especially road environment and stuff, you got to get more out of your quarterback. So for Tennessee to win this game, Joe Milton's got to make some plays. Now, will he be perfect? No. Somebody asked me in my chat the other night, fill in the blank. For Tennessee to win, Joe Milton throws for blank yards, and Joe Milton throws for less than blank interceptions. I put 225 yards, and I put, because again, you don't have to be Superman here, especially if you have a run game. I put 225 yards, and I said less than 2 interceptions because, again, interceptions happen. That's football when you play good defenses, but you can't continue to make a habit. And in SEC play, Joe Milton has turned the football over, and that just can't happen. So I think if Tennessee's going to win this game, Joe Milton obviously has to play better than he did last week. I think that he's got to go out and make some plays. I would love to see, Grant, what do you think about this early in the game? Maybe not play one, but early in the game, take a shot with Joe, do a design quarterback run, whether it's a zone read keep, whether it's a speed option, just something to get him going, get those juices flowing, adrenaline going, trying to get him a little bit more energized earlier in the game. I would like to see that if I'm Tennessee.
I love the option wrinkle that they've shown not a ton of. We saw it against A&M last week, and Joe made a really good read there and got up the field. That was wasn't an option, I don't think, on that first play against UTSA, but it was a read play where Joe had to get out
His
wide
zone read,
and read
yeah.
the defense. So I think that could be a strength for Joe Milton because we've seen him play well in those very few times that we've seen that. So I think that's something that, yeah, you could settle in and have that option look and let Joe make that read and let Joe get up the field and maybe get a little bit of chunk yardage there to maybe get something going for Tennessee early and to maybe help them settle in because I don't know. The handoffs up the middle, it feels like almost you're waving the white flag on some of those plays because it's like there's a big play and then they just hand it off the middle and then it's 2nd 12 and it feels like you've, I don't know, shot yourself in the foot. So I think that it's going to have to be creative and in space and trying to stretch them out as much as you can to help get some chunk yardage and maybe help this Tennessee offense settle in and kind of regain some confidence.
Obviously another key to the game. And again, it's just the caveat. I've been talking about it all week long, and I did it earlier in the show. It's like, I can like Tennessee in this matchup. I like Tennessee doing this. I like Tennessee doing this. You got to do this. But the overarching caveat here, you got to handle the road environment. You just got to be better on the road. Pre-snap penalty, procedural penalties, communication. You know, it's so critical. How much does Cooper Mays help in that regard? We're about to find out. I mean, he's not going to race everything, okay? It's still playing on the road in the SEC. But those 3rd and 1s, when it gets loud, man, can you hold your water? Can you listen? Can you not get in the habit of starting 1st and 15 like you did in the Swamp? Because if that's your habit, then run game, you can kiss that down the drain. It's gone.
Right.
Like it's gone. So that's the biggest thing. And a lot of people are not picking Tennessee because of that reason, and that is completely fair. I've talked to a lot of people that said they would pick Tennessee this week if this game was at home. Tennessee is an 8.5-point underdog. The total is at 48.5 at the time of this recording. And as we do every single week, we are recording this prior to our picks going out at Volquest.com. So I'm putting you on the spot. Grant Ramey, score prediction, 3rd Saturday in October, and then follow it with a bold prediction.
You're not going to be happy, Tennessee fans. You're not going to be happy. I think Tennessee can win this game. A year ago, I picked Tennessee to beat Alabama, and I wrote it has to be in a perfect world for it to happen. And I think Tennessee had a perfect world situation, the game, the way that played out. I think it has to be a perfect world situation again, but on the road, I didn't know what was going to happen last week, but I picked Tennessee to beat Texas A&M because they're really tough to beat in Knoxville. Now, what we've seen from them on the road and what we've talked about for the last 30 minutes is they have not been good in hostile environments the last 3 times we've seen it happen. So I need to see them go on the road in a hostile environment like Bryant Dennis did. I need to see them play well and be competitive. That's why I can't pick them to win this game because I think they can. I just don't think it's going to happen because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen enough evidence to believe it's going to happen. So I think I'm going to be the biggest square in the world and pick Alabama to win 30-21. And it just depends on what kind of number you got, which team covers that spread. And a bold prediction.
So you have Vols not covering.
Well, it depends. If it's Alabama -10, then Tennessee covers, right? If it's
if it's -10, yeah. But if it's like at the time of this recording, it's 8.5. So like if it's there, then you have Tennessee not covering. But it could change,
right?
Yeah.
Biggest square in the world. I'm picking the game by the point spread. So let's see. What are we doing here? Bold predictions. 224 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns on the ground and a defensive touchdown.
That's pretty bold, my man. That's pretty bold.
Well, it's bold picks.
Somebody last week tweeted me or DM'd me or something and said, "Hey, for your bold predictions next week, can you just say Tennessee scores 50 points?"
There you go.
Because our bold predictions have been hitting here lately. Okay, so
to be honest though, I can't even remember mine from last week.
Yeah.
Can you?
From last week, no. The one against South Carolina, I definitely do because we pretty much hit it almost. Man, I did this on Locked On Vols earlier in the week, and like I have never been characterized as a homer, and I hope I've never been characterized as like a Tennessee hater. I mean, that's my job is to be in the middle. I have never been characterized as a homer, and I'm stupid for doing this, and I get it because there are so many reasons why you shouldn't pick Tennessee in this game. But I just, as somebody wrote on the board earlier this week, I got that feeling. I do. The numbers, man, and I know you don't play it on paper, but the numbers, so much of it point to Tennessee. It really does. And you said last year you picked Tennessee, and it's, again, fair assessment. You picked Tennessee. Everything has to line up, and it goes perfectly for Tennessee to win. I feel like this year you don't need that because I feel like Alabama,
Right.
especially offensively, is just nowhere close. Like, you're going to have ample opportunities when you make mistakes to overcome those mistakes, in my opinion. So I'm going to pick Tennessee to win this one, man. And I know this is dumb. I'm probably going to be the only Volquest staff member, maybe Rob, that's going to pick this. But I don't know why. I have a feeling Tennessee can win this one. It would be the first win in Alabama since 2003. It would be the second win in the last 16 years against Alabama for Tennessee.
Right.
Nothing makes sense. I recognize that, but I don't know. I like Tennessee to run the football. I like Joe Milton to be better, and I like Tennessee's defense not to be elite, but to be good and make some plays. And I think that's a winning formula. Caveat, handle the environment, and that's the thing. I haven't seen Tennessee handle the environment yet, so that's why it's so dumb for me to pick Tennessee right now. And that's a big reason why you didn't pick Tennessee. Got to handle the environment. So anyway, sunshine pumpers, orange shaded sunglasses here on GameQuest. At least over here for Eric Cain. Grant Ramey's bringing the program down, but that's why we make such a good team, right?
Hey, if you're right, Sunday will be a great day for you. While I'll be getting tarred and feathered on the general's quarters. But hey, I'll sit there and I'll take it. I mean, it is what it is. You're guessing games. We need a bold prediction though. You didn't give us a bold prediction.
Oh yeah, bold prediction. Give me. Defensively, Tennessee forces 3 turnovers. I feel like that's pretty bold. I think Tennessee's going to get back there to Milroe, maybe make them fumble, maybe a strip sack, maybe something like that. I think that's going to be one of them. I like Tennessee to get a pick, and then some combination of one of those for that third one. I like Tennessee to win the turnover battle handedly, and that's a big reason why Tennessee's set up with short fields to help Milton, to help this offense, and to score some points. So give me Tennessee's defense forcing 3 turnovers. Not Super Bowl, but that's a really, really good day at the office.
If they force 3 turnovers and Tennessee runs the football like Tennessee has shown that it can pretty consistently run the football, that's a really, really good recipe for handling a road environment and being in position to win a game late. For sure.
I mean, the way we're talking, I mean, it sounds like Tennessee's going to play the best football game in program history with all these rushing yards, and Milton's going to connect on a few and 3 turnovers. Nah, it's just, I think Tennessee's a solid team. It might not be a championship team, but I think Tennessee is a solid team. It just needs some more help from the aerial attack, and we'll see if that happens.
Right.
Grant Ramey, I'm Eric Cain. This is GameQuest. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single week. What an incredible deal happening right now. Help Grant Ramey to feed his children. Seriously, help him. Cue that music right now, Help him feed his children.
Sarah McLaughlin.
$1 for 1 month or 50% off your first year annual subscription. That deal's not going to last much longer, just this week until after the game. That's at Volquest.com. Come and join our family and the craziness over on the General's Quarters. Appreciate you guys for being here. If you're going to the game this weekend, drive safe, have fun, and we'll see what happens, guys. Volquest.com. Grant Ramey, I'm Eric Cain.